Shalom and welcome to another episode of Sabbath Cast. Today we just have a couple topics, maybe one short topic or main topic, and then probably if we have enough time to jump through a few others. But topic is we're going over fringes. Reason being, right, because it's a law. First of all, it's a Sabbath, and then we've been kind of going back and forth with how do we wear fringes? What's a fringe? Is it being over righteous? I think that was a thing a couple years back. Wearing too many fringes now, you kind of looking like a Pharisee, so on and so forth, Sadducees, whatever the case may be, right? Then other people's like, okay, you got to wear your fringes. You don't wear fringes, you're breaking the law. Back and forth, right? So we want to look at multiple things. What's a fringe? Who should wear them? When should you wear them? How do you wear them? Right? And there's a few other who, what, when, hows in there as well, right? So look at the illustration on the side. So on the top, we got one style of fringe, right? You see multiple fringe hanging hanging off the garment on the number one on the top side, and then on the bottom side you see something that we see that seems to be a little bit more what they would call nowadays streamlined. You got the one tassel, four tassels on each side, and that stop, right? So we're gonna look at multiple things, right? We're gonna look at what is a fringe, who should wear them, so on and so forth. What does it mean? So let's check it out. So first scripture we'll go to is Numbers 15 and 38, right? And we're going to jump from this PowerPoint over to eastward and back and forth. Throw a couple pictures in there as well. All right, so Numbers 15:38, right? Numbers 15 and 38 says, "Speak unto the children of Israel, right, and bid them that they make them fringes in the borders of their garments throughout their generations," right? So speak unto the children of Israel, right? So who's this verse talking to right now? We got a little young dude said he's talking to the Israelites, right? All the Israelites, right? I agree, right? And bid them that they make fringes in the borders of their garments throughout their generations, and that they put upon them a fringe of the borders of a ribbon of blue, right? And I put the Hebrew word right there, right, for what that ribbon of blue is. What does that look like, right? So keep that in mind, state. But first answer to our question is we have Israelites wear fringes, right? If you're an Israelite, you should be wearing fringes. And throughout the world, you'll see Israelites wearing fringes either consciously or subconsciously, which is crazy, right? Or sometimes you'll see people emulate because the fringe is a noble look, right? And you'll see other people, okay, let's go and do this and do this, and because it looks a certain type of way, right? Now, let's look up keep going. What is a fringe? So I just put up a etymology dictionary, right? So etymology dictionary tries to find the root origin of words, right? So this is etymology, early 14C, right? 14th century. Ornamental bordering, a material for a fringe from the thread, string, or strand, fringe, hem, right? Keep that in mind, hem, border, right? Fribia, fibers, threads, fringe, so on and so forth, right? It says outer edge, right? Margin, a few different things, right? So it's the corner of a garment, right? Or so it could be a thread, a strand, right? A hem of a garment, right? Keep all these definitions in mind, right? Now we're going to go to the Strong's or Hebrew for it, right? So if we go back for fringe, I didn't put the word there. I should have. But let's go over here into the Strong's and see if we can get that better. All right, let me see if it'll pop up. And keep this 1 Samuel 24 and 1 in mind too, as well. And we'll jump back. We kind of skipped ahead a little bit there, but follow. We're at here. So Numbers, KJV plus 15. And 38. Numbers 15 and 38. So we're looking at fringe. So it's H6734. Right. So H6734, as you can see on the screen there. Go back over to the document. So fringe, the word fringe in Hebrew, right, without what is that called? What is that called? Vowel sounds, right? That should be taza, taza, ya, taza, right? So you got taza, taza, then ya. Next one is taza, and then fa, right? So taza, ya, taza, right? Which is a fringe tassel lock, right? But let's go deeper, right? Where the origin of that word comes from. It says H631, right? And it comes from this word right here, which is taza taza or taza wa taza, which means flower or bloom flower or blooming flower, right? That's where the word fringe comes from, right? Taza taza, which means like a flower or a blooming flower, right? That's from the Strongs, and you also got from the BDB, right? So the word flower comes from the word fringe comes from the word flower, right? So it should, right? That kind of describes what the appearance of a fringe would look like, right? If you look at a blooming flower, right, you get something like that. Jumping ahead, definitely jumping ahead, but that's what a fringe, right? You would assume what it would look like. Even for an example, right? We were looking at the uh, uh, Solomon's Temple, right? When they were looking at lilies, when they would make decorations that would look like lilies, right? Because they're taking a piece of nature, copying it, and then throwing it in the temple as an ornament or as a decoration, right? So I'm assuming, right? And anyway, I don't even have to assume. That's what you get the same idea from the fringe, right? It's looking like a flower, right? It looks like a flower, kind of like the lilies in the temple, like they're pomegranate, right? Multiple things where you get that same example, right? So what does a fringe look like? What would you think a fringe would look like? A flower, right? Because the word comes from the word taza taza, right? Which means to bloom or flower, right? Now, let's keep going. So keep that in mind. So what is a fringe? Why do we wear the fringes? Why do we wear fringes? Because it's a law, but why? Why is it a law? But what about that law, right? What in that law tells us why to wear the fringes?
Well, let me just. You still trying?
Right? So let's read it. Numbers 15 and 39, right? And it shall be unto you a fringe that you may look upon it and remember all the commandments of the Most High and do them and seek not after your own heart and your own eyes, after which you used to go a horn, that you may remember to do all my commandments and being holy unto your God, right? So yeah, it's supposed to remind you of the commandments, right? All the commandments, right? How many commandments are there? That's the 10 commandments, right? But there's a lot more. And that's not even that. The 10 commandments is more so, it's a summarization. You know what a summarization is? The summarization is like if I say, you know, if we say, hey, like the boxer, let's say Lomachenko, right? Or let's say, what other boxer? I don't know, yeah, Tank, right? We'll say that for summarization, we'll say where he's from is from Maryland, right? But really, and more specifically, it'd be Baltimore, right? Is a specific state that he's from, right? Or we say he's from America, but more specifically, he's from this, so on and so forth. So summarization is like taking all this stuff and you're saying it, summarize it in a smaller,
You just go back
shorter form, right? You get what I'm saying? So the Ten Commandments is just a summarization of all the commandments, right? There's in the commandments, right? Because it's over 600. It's like it's debatable as far as 15, 13, whatever the case may be, right? But it's over 600 commandments, right? So you think about a fringe, right? What do you think about when you think of a fringe that we just talked about, right? You think about a blooming flower, right? Then you're also thinking about all the commandments, right? Now, if there's 600 commandments, is that a lot or a little bit? That's a lot. That's what the kids say, right? So when we're thinking about the fringe, we're thinking about a lot of commandments, and we're thinking about a blooming flower, right? As far as the representation, what they look like, so on and so forth, right? going over, right? So what is a fringe? So Tyndale, again, I think we gave examples, not examples, but proofs as far as why you should look at the Tyndale Bible. William Tyndale was a brother similar to King James, right? Both King James was a black man, right? And he was going against the Roman army, right, during this time. Tyndale, similar deal, right? He was actually killed for translating or bringing the Bible from Hebrew, right, and Greek into English. He actually and ultimately was killed for that, right? Then King James ended up picking up the rest of his works and pretty much finishing it off. It says like 90% of the King James Bible comes from the Tyndale, right? Yeah, so the King James Bible is just a finished, complete version of the Tyndale Bible, right? Because William Tyndale was killed. He didn't really get to finish his whole deal, right? Because he's running for at that time they're running for their lives. As far as it's still illegal, during that time to be serving the Most High and things of that nature, right? And there's a lot of people still coming against the Israelites, really for the longest time, right? But during that time as well, specifically, right? But anyways, so in the Tyndale version, right, for numbers, you got Numbers 15 and 38 through 40, right? And the Most High spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and bid them that they make them guards upon the quarters of their garments throughout their generations, and let them make them guards of ribbons of ginseng, right? Ginseng, right? So same exact verse, right? But this one it tells you or it labels the fringes as guards, right? But it's the same thing. Guards, fringes, same thing, right? But it tells you as far as that ribbon of blue, it says of ribbons of ginseng. Now we gotta look up what ginseng is, right? So ginseng, the flower, right, is this flower that's in that area. You go in the landmass of Israel, you got this flower right here called the hyacinth flower, huh? My bad. Say again, buddy.
Hyacinth.
Say again.
Hyacinth.
Yeah, hyacinth, right? One of our little ones said, "Is that a flower where all the black people were at during slavery?" Uh, cotton. Yeah, is that what you're talking about? No, 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 no. It's different. Cotton's different. Cotton looks like a little. You ever seen a cotton ball? It's like fluffy white. Not this is not even in America. This is in Israel or the Eastern Hemisphere, right? That's where that's at, right? Hyacinth, right, or the ginseng flower, right? That's what that looks like, right? So it's a variant of blue or indigo, deep blue type situation, right? That's that color we're looking at, right? So you can say blue, you can say indigo, you can, I don't know, but you would see people were saying it's more so purple. I wouldn't really say purple like that, but that type of color variation, right, is what you're looking for, right? Now we're getting more specific. So now another place we find fringes at is Deuteronomy 22 and 12, right? Deuteronomy 22 and 12 says, Thou shalt make the fringes upon the four quarters of thy vesture, wherewith thou coverest thyself, right? What's the four quarters of your vesture, or what's the four quarters of your clothes? That's like parts, right? Quarters like a section, part, so on and so forth, right? If you guys see like
Yep.
a say again?
No, I didn't say nothing. I'm just saying right.
Yep, yep. But I'm talking to one of our little ones, right? Um, so quarter, right? It's like a portion, a part, right? What's the four parts of your clothes? Your sleeves. That's a great question. That's a great answer. What else? The middle of your shirt? Maybe, yeah. That too, yeah. And what else? So your sleeves, what goes in your sleeves? Your hands, your arms, right? Okay, what else goes in your clothes? Goes into your clothes. All right, great answers so far, right? But your four quarters of your vesture, right? Let's look it up. Let's not just make it up, right? Four quarters of those quarters, right? And whenever you see quarters, right? Whenever you see those quarters, it's also synonymous with fringes. Quarters, fringes, right? Always in somewhere in the same area with each other, right? But quarters from here, right, is kana, right? Ka, na, and pa, kana, right? It's a wing, right? Do people have wings like that? No, people don't have wings like that, right? Or at least not the way it would sound like a bird has wings, right? But people don't have wings. But then it also says an extremity. You know what your extremities are? Your extremities are your arms, right? And your legs. Those are your extremities, right? So when you look at, let's go back over here. I wish I had more pictures, man. I try to find pictures of like the old school Israelite garments. Nobody wears those anymore. Like completely, everyone got scared out of doing it, right? But anyways, if you're supposed to have fringes, right, with a ribbon and blue upon the four extremities or four quarters, right, which are extremities, what are your four extremities? Your arms, your right arm, your left arm, your right leg, your left leg, right? Those are your one, two, three, four extremities, right? That's where your fringe is supposed to go, right? Now we look at this over here on these examples. Can you see this? How many extremities, right, does he have his fringes on? Yeah, just maybe his legs. Yeah, kind of, right? This guy over here looks like just his legs and more so on his shirt, right? Then you got this guy over here. What extremities does he have the fringes on? On his hips, kind of, yeah, but your hips not really extremity, right? But if you look up fringes, right, these are the guys, right? You look up fringes, biblical fringes. This is the guys you get. Be careful, buddy. This is what the examples we get, right? But as far as we read, you're supposed to have it on your extremities, your arms and legs. It's supposed to look like a blooming flower, right? It's supposed to be an example of all the commandments, right? But you look over here on this side, look at these guys. They've got it everywhere, right? They got them everywhere, right? You say again? Yeah, that would make more sense, right? If you're talking about all the commandments, right? How many commandments are there? Over 600. You're just, hey man, you're on top of it today. Over 600. You're probably not going to put exactly 600 or six, whatever the case may be, but your idea is you're trying to represent that many commandments, right? Or the idea of all these commandments, right? That you're supposed to be living by and thinking about every day, right? This looks a little bit more accurate, right? I would find another picture, right? Or had another picture. Again, we look at an example. These guys, you got one, two over here. This guy's got his high shorts on, right? With these long tassels. Yeah, these guys over here, right? Long tassels on, kind of maybe on, you can argue that it's on his legs. And then you got these guys over here, right? He's got it all four extremities, right? Fringes, fringes, right? Over here, fringes on the arm, leg, all that, right? So that's that, right? So what's it about, right? What is it about? when you wear your fringes, right? It's obviously about keeping the commandments, right? It's to more so to remember the commandments, remember the Most High, remember all that particular situation, right? When I bring up the point as far as I look up Hebrew Israelite garments, Hebrew Israelite fringes, no more can you find on Google anyone with that full, you know, fringed out garment, right? Because people, I don't know, I could say they could be afraid or maybe they just don't promote it, whatever the case may be, but you don't see that really anymore. You used to a lot, where it looked more so like dudes are trying to be like this, right? But then they call them Power Rangers, right? With all the fringes and stuff. But this is tight. This is dope, right? But either way, right? What is it about? So during Christ's time, Israelites wore fringes, right? Yeshaya called them out. Who they call out? The let's go to the scripture, right? So go to Matthew 23 and 5. Matthew 23 and 5. Matthew 23 and 5. Right. And we'll go, oh man, I missed it. Let me go back to the other one actually. Because we want that later, actually. Matthew 23 and 5, right? We'll read from the top. Then spake Yeshua to the multitude and to his disciples, saying, the scribes and the Pharisees sit at Moses' feet, right? So you got the scribes and Pharisees, right? He's throwing it out there, right? Scribes and Pharisees, verse 3. All therefore, whatsoever they bid you, observe, that observe and do, right? So this is Christ himself speaking. What was the Pharisees and Sadducees telling the people to do? Or Pharisees and scribes, I'm sorry, telling the people to do most of the time, right? Kind of most of the time, right? What was the scribes and Pharisees getting on the people for? To get out of slavery? Not really, unfortunately. But it was more so the commandments, right? But they were being more like like a lawyer per se, right? Lawyers always are not the greatest people, right? But a lawyer is a person nowadays. If you go to court, you got some guys that can murder someone, but if their lawyer's good, right, and they know the law is good and they can speak their way around, they can get a dude that actually was guilty of murder out of a murder charge, right? That's kind of how the Pharisees worked, right? They knew the law to a certain degree, right? But it was more so to find loopholes and kind of still kind of do some dirt, right? But the idea of what they were supposed to be doing was letting people know, hey, keep the commandments, do what you're supposed to be doing, so on and so forth, right? That's what Christ is saying. Whatever they're telling you to do, right, within the commandments, obviously, do that, right? Observe and do it, right? For any other, doctrines out there that believe that Christ was telling people not to keep the commandments anymore, right? Verse 4, for they bind heavy burdens. Okay, I'm sorry. Verse 3 says, but do not after their works, for they say and do not. So these type of people, again, they would tell people, hey man, do this, do that. But then when you actually go and follow them for a day, they probably don't do none of the commandments, right? Or they were doing things outside of the commandments, right? Then he goes and says, for they bind heavy burdens and grievous to be borne and lay them on men's shoulders, but they themselves will not move with them of their fingers, right? So they bind heavy orders on people, right? On the people that are trying to serve the Most High. But then when it's time for them to do some work, right? Time for them to sacrifice, they couldn't do it, right? Says, but all their works they do for to be seen of men. They make broad their phylacteries, right? And enlarge the borders of their garments. So these dudes, right, they were making broad their phylacteries. So phylactery, I don't know if they got visual representations of it, but they do like symbolic versions of it, right? But the phylactery back in the day when I looked it up, it's a phylactery. It's like a tassel or like a piece of paper, right? Or a cloth that had a scripture on it. They'll go through and put the whole, whatever Deuteronomy on it. They're trying to show out. They'll make the list extra long, like they keep on his commandments, right? Yeah, like a big old they could have did that, just make the words bigger, or they just draw write out a long scripture, whatever the case may be, right? And then they hold it with them. Right? That's what a phylactery is, right? And then it says enlarge the borders of their garments, right? Now, if you look at borders again, the only time people look up this borders, right, is when they're saying not to wear fringes, right? They're saying that Christ was telling people not to wear fringes, right? Or they were being too um, superficial just because they were wearing fringes, right? But Christ is getting on them because they're making these fringes obnoxiously long, right? That's the more so talking about the length, huh? Right? And they're just being superficial, right? They're only doing it like I'm gonna only be righteous, I'm gonna be extra righteous when people see me, but then behind the scenes, I'm not doing nothing, right? And that's what Christ was talking about, right? But let's look at that again, right? So for borders of the garments, right? That border is G2899, right? Which goes into a fringe or tassel, right? So whenever you see borders, it also implies that same fringe, right? Borders and fringes are one and the same, right? Right, right. Oh, something else I want to pull out, right? As far as the extra long stuff, right? Because if the Israelites have to wear it all the time, right? You're wearing fringes all the time. If your fringe is extra long, you're trying to grapple somebody, right? You're trying to fight, you're trying to go to war. Will that help you or harm you? And harm is too long. Like, yeah, you trip over, you get caught up. If dude could take your own, imagine getting choked out with your own fringes because the mugs is too long, right? But was it done? Yes, it was done.
Jeez.
Crazy, but it was done. I don't know if you guys remember this, but during David's time, right, he was beefing with Saul, right? He's beefing with Saul and he caught Saul lacking, right? Caught Saul sleeping, whether he caught him in a cave, right? And he's cut off, or let me read it first. This is 1 Samuel 24:4. And the men of David said unto him, Behold, the day which the Most High said unto thee, Behold, I will deliver thine enemy into thine hand, that thou mayest do to him as thou seem good unto thee. Right? So David's men was hyping, like gassing David up, like, yo, the Most High said that you're gonna be the king, right? He's gonna put your enemies in your hand. And you could do basically talking about Saul, you can do to him whatever you want, man. You can get him out of there, right? This is a real wartime situation. David, all his men, these are like real warriors, real soldiers, like could harm and kill somebody and been harming and killing people that were coming up against him. Real legitimate styles, right? Then I'm gonna continue reading. It says, Then David arose and cut off the skirt, right, of Saul's robe privately, right? What is that skirt? Look at that skirt. It's that same word we're looking at before, right? Kanap, right? Or border, right? Let me go over here. That border, the extremity, right?
Not.
Kanap, right? Back over here, when you read about the fringes being on the four corners of the vesture, right? So he essentially cut off one of Saul's fringes off his garment,
Wow.
right? But you're seeing, why am I bringing it up? Because I'm trying to bring practicality, right? Practicality. It was people were doing it. It was possible, right? You can wear, fringes, things of that nature. You wouldn't do it extra long because of situations like this. If you're in battle, again, super duper long, anything will get you hemmed up, right? Even Absalom hair was extra long, got caught up in a tree, just being over the top, right? It's not efficient, right? But you can see right here that even Saul, the way they wore things, Christ, right? The way they wore it, and it was a practical way of keeping the commandments, practical way of showing the Most High that you love him, that you respect him, so on and so forth, right? So we'll go back over here to Christ, right? So what is it about with the obnoxiously long fringes, right? That would probably be a no-go, especially in a situation like Saul and David. If one of these dudes got hemmed up, off a fringe, it'd be crazy, right? But it was practical, right? It's very probably wouldn't be ridiculously long, but long enough where people can know that's an Israelite, right?
Right, right.
Where we at here? So this is Matthew 20. I'm slacking. Matthew 9 and 20. And
I'll read,
behold,
I'll read it. Matthew 9 and 20. And behold, a woman was diseased with an issue of blood 12 years and came behind him and touched the hem of his garment.
we're gonna look at him. So this lady, right? She had a disease, issue of blood, so she was bleeding. Probably something along the lines of like a period, but an over. Um, I believe there's a medical term for it, right? For a woman that's bleeding like excessively outside of her issue, huh? Not hemorrhage, nah. There's probably a term, but like an extremely long issue, right? This lady had a tough case, right? She saw Christ, right? And she touched the hem of his garment, right? Why didn't it say just touch the garment, right? And she touched his garment. It specifically says him of his garment, right? But was this a specific day? Let me see if there was this was a specific time of day that Christ was wearing fringes. Because it could have been a feast day.
Wasn't in the cup holder or anything?
At verse 1, and he entered into the city, entered into a ship, passed over and came into his own city. Good cheer. It's just a regular day, right? Most times you see Christ pull up on a Passover, something along those lines, but just a day-to-day deal, right? Doing his street speaking, living his life, all that. Day to day, this lady grabs the hem of his garment, right? This lady that has a serious disease, right? Where she's been bleeding 12 years straight, right? You look at that 2899, right? Let's go to the scripture and let's show it real fast. Matthew 9. Scrolling down. This is different. Let me see. No, okay, we looked at a different spot too. So him was one, right? And then we're going to go to Luke 8 and 44.
Luke 8 and 44. Came behind him and touched the border of his garment, and immediately her issue of blood stanched.
And it touched the border of his garment. What do we read border at? Remember where we read border at, you guys? When we're talking about fringes in Numbers 15, when it says he shall fringes on all their garments on the borders and ripping that border blue, right? It's the same deal, right? Now we look at, again, the G 2899. I'm going to show it on the screen from Strong's. So we're going to Luke 8 and 44.
Luke 8 and 44. Came behind him and touched the border of his garment, and immediately her issue of blood stanched.
So she touched the border of his garment, right? We look up what a border is, right? That G2899. It's a fringe, right, or a tassel, right? So this lady touched Christ's what and was healed.
His fringes.
It touched his fringes and she was healed, right? Which is type more so because of Christ, right? Obviously it was because of Christ, but it was dope because you're seeing that Christ himself wore fringes, right? This lady, and someone wrote that in there specifically to let you know Christ wore fringes, right? So this lady touched Christ's fringes and was healed, right?
That is wonderful. That is beautiful, man.
Super powerful, right? Well, that is that, right? So you should wear fringes, definitely wear fringes. As far as when we look at the examples of fringes, on my left side may not be the example of a fringe, right? Why? because you're thinking of all the commandments, right? You're thinking about multiple commandments. There's over 600 commandments, right? Also, we had Christ. He was talking about the Pharisees, right? What was his beef with the Pharisees? His beef with the Pharisees being superficial, right? He was saying they were making large or enlarging the borders of the garments, like going extra ham with the size of your fringes, right? Or like it's too much for the show and not enough, okay, actually being a righteous person, right? That was his only beef. He wasn't wearing fringes, right? It was making him extra obnoxious, right? Right. And they're supposed to be worn, right, on the canop, right? Or the borders, right? What are the borders or the wings or the quarters of a person's clothes? Your extremities, right? Your arms and your legs, right? So when you look over here on the left side, you don't see it, right? But that's much pushed, that's much more popular. What are these, right? It's funny because it goes into their own uh, Wikipedia and all that stuff to explain what these are, and they're trying to attach this to the scriptures. But it reminds me of the meme where it says, "What are those?" But what are these,
Right,
right?
right.
Read the scriptures, right? You don't find it particularly, right? But reading the scriptures, what you will find is something closer to this, right? A bunch of little fringes, right? And even something better than that was a brother over here, because we're looking at something that would look like a hyacinth or a jacinth, right? Or that blooming. Let's go over here, right? That taza or taza, which means a blossom, the flower, blooming flower, right? He wants something that looks like that, right? You look over here, right? This brother on his four extremities, right? Something looks like a little bit more frayed, right? A little bit more floral, right? That's what you want, right? Something that was closer to what Christ would have worn, right? Something that when someone was looking at this person, like they can tell, hey, that's an Israelite. And more specific, that's Christ, but that's an Israelite. Let me touch the hem of this fringe he's got on his garment, and maybe I'll get healed. And she actually was, right? But super, super, super short. But again, we wear fringes. We're not being over righteous, right? We're not being, like the Pharisees, scribes. Christ only got on them because they're doing too much, right? They're making them extra long, right? These extra long borders, right? That's why he got it in, but they weren't actually keeping the commandments, right? But when you wear fringes, like you're being like Christ, right? You're being like Christ when you wear your fringes, right? Um, well, with that, that's all I got right there for this particular topic. Anyone else got anything else to add?
No,
Or any
no, no.
questions?
I just thought that was an excellent class, man. That you know what? Go through and ask the kids what their favorite part of the class was. I'm looking to see if I can find a garment that's acceptable from some old Passover pictures of brothers.
Kind of. What was your favorite part of the class, huh?
My favorite part of the class was when we learned about the fringes and how to put on the fringes and yeah.
Okay. Anything more? That's good. What about any little ones on the line? I'm not gonna say no specific names. I'll try not to. Or Shama, because that's your Hebrew name.
My favorite part about the lesson was about the fringes. So was
The,
mine.
the whole part of the lesson was about fringes. What specifically?
Like how what the meaning of the fringes was in the scriptures mainly. Yeah.
What's the meaning of the fringes? What's the meaning of the fringes?
So it's okay if you can't explain it. I think
We
that
got
you
little
guys.
guys.
Oh, you got somebody?
You gotta get closer, buddy.
It reminds us of the commandments.
Good stuff. Great stuff.
There you go. That's exactly what it is. I put a picture up for you too of some brothers, some of my brothers. Uh, I rode with hard back in the days. So yeah, there you go. That's the way they should be. Um, but it's crazy because even in modern times, 10, 20, 30 years ago, I would see brothers that would, you see these fringes like how they have right here. But then there was brother, I seen one brother with his fringes so long that I believe another brother was carrying his fringes behind him like a train. And brother was like, oh man, that's tight. And but the thing is, it's funny because that's another identifier, right? Because our people, are those people, man, that one way or another, we're kind of a light unto the Gentiles, right? We show off, we shine, and so the Pharisees were no different, but these people were over righteous. I mean, they were over righteous and under righteous, right? They were over righteous in the way that they expected others to keep the law, right, and under righteous in the way they kept the law. Over righteous, also a lot of times what Christ was talking about in the way that they, wore their garments. They wore these long garments, these long, fringes, what is it call it? Enlarged borders of their garments, just to look extra righteous or extra powerful. And that's not what it was about. But as far as you asking the kids, man, I love this class. My favorite part of it, though, as a big kid myself, is the fact that we see that Christ wore fringes, right? I need to, like I said, wear fringes a lot more here. We're in the state of Colorado, and in a part of Colorado that we're in, like it's not a lot of places to go out and street speak. So I know a lot of brothers, street speak in the larger cities every Shabbat. A lot of times our feast days are every time really our feast days, our Sabbath days is in our home. Like literally, you might hear side talking and things of that nature, or kids, babies crying, because we're in our home, and a lot of times you're comfortable in your home and you're just, wearing home clothes. So we're comfortable sitting here during the Shabbat, but wearing fringes is an actual commandment and it feels good. I know that I can speak for self in that when I put on a fringed outfit, I feel different, right? Especially one that is well put together. I feel different. I feel a certain type of way. So it's no surprise, man, to me that it felt so good. The other scripture where it says that, the young woman touched his fringes, touched Christ's fringes, and it healed her. Obviously, it was the power of Christ, but I know what it's like to put on a Hebrew Israelite garment in a world that doesn't care for Hebrew Israelites. The things that people are all into in this world is ridiculous. Everybody, I get to talking, I'm telling you, and with the exception of you all, when I get to talking about scriptural things, people don't want to hear stuff like that. A lot of people don't. I'm just so happy that there are so many, even outside of Colorado, so many, Hebrew Israelite communities that brothers and sisters, husbands, wives, and children, they can go in and, you know, congregate with one another and fellowship with one another and have conversations that they can all, identify and feel comfortable because in certain places like where we live, man, all you got is a few families here and there. I love to see these groups, Israelite groups that are coming together on feast days. And again, like you see these brothers and sisters actually rocking their garments, and you see men with their garments and sisters and children even wearing their garments. And just to know what that represents, to say, hey, man, I want to walk around. And when people see me, they remind me of the commandments because they ask me about my fringes. And it makes me think about the commandments that I'm supposed to be keeping. It should be a little bit more difficult for you to do evil things when you're wearing a Hebrew Israelite garment. Not to say that people haven't done it, right? Because they do it all the time. But at the end of the day, for your clothes to be a reminder of your behavior, that's saying something about your belief system. Hebrew Israelites are the only people on the planet where the clothes that they wear is a reminder of the way they're supposed to be. Right? So, yeah, man, that's all I had to add on that.
Con. Anyone else? Any other questions online? Scriptures to add on? All righty. So with that, we're gonna go ahead and end this lesson. Say shalom. Shalom.